Hi everybody, I'm thrilled to have you here with me on Main Mission Hope, where I try to dive into questions about our faith to help us grow closer to God, Jesus and the Bible. And today I want to take a deep dive into what crucifixion and scourging really meant in the time of Jesus. We're going to take a look at the history, when these punishments were invented, who faced these sorts of punishments, what actually happened, variations, why they were used, how common was it to be crucified or scourged, where you would be crucified or scourged, famous examples, and when the practice finally stopped. Most importantly, I'll share how understanding this can deepen our appreciation for the incredible price Jesus paid during his passion, scourging, and crucifixion. It reminds us of the hope we have in his sacrifice, a hope that turns suffering into redemption and invites us to live transformed lives. Let's start with scourging, also known as flagellation, because it was an often brutal prelude to a crucifixion in Roman times. I think it's fascinating and sobering to trace scourging back historically. It wasn't a Roman invention. Records show it emerged in ancient heathen societies, perhaps as early as the Persians or early cultures, as a method of corporal punishment. By the time of the Roman Empire, it had become standardized. Historical accounts from writers like Josephus, the Jewish historian from the 1st century, describe it as a common penalty for slaves, non-citizens, rebels, and serious criminals, never for Roman citizens who were protected by law. It was widespread across the Roman Empire, from Italy to provinces like Judea, where Jesus lived. Theologically, this aligns with the scripture's depiction of Jesus' suffering as fulfilling prophecies of a servant who bears out our pains, from Isaiah chapter 53, showing God's plan to redeem humanity through humility and endurance. So what actually happened during a scourging? The victim was stripped naked for maximum humiliation, hands tied to an upright post to expose his back, buttocks and legs. The Roman tool was the flagrum, a short whip with 2 or 3 leather thongs attached to a handle, embedded with sharp metal balls or bone shards or hooks to tear the flesh. Soldiers would strike repeatedly, often alternating to prolong the agony. Variations included limiting lashes to 39 under the Jewish influence to avoid exceeding Deuteronomy 25:3, but Romans could go unlimited, leading to exposed bones, organ damage, and death from blood loss or shock. Historically, this why it was used, not just to punish, but to deter crime through terror and to weaken victims before further execution. In Jesus' case, as described in the Gospels, this was part of Pilate's attempt to appease the crowd, from John 19:1. Yet it prophetically fulfilled the suffering servant who takes our infirmities, Matthew 8:17, drawing from Isaiah. Moving on to crucifixion itself, which built on this horror. Crucifixion's origins are ancient. Historians trace it to the Persians in the 6th century BC, where it was a method of execution by suspension. It spread to the Carthaginians and Seleucids before the Romans refined it into a tool of imperial control from the 3rd century BC onward. Who got crucified? Mostly slaves, provincials, rebels, and those accused of sedition or piracy, never free Roman citizens, as that was illegal. It was incredibly common, especially in rebellious areas like Judea, where thousands might be crucified during uprisings. Locations spanned the entire Roman Empire, from Rome to the frontiers. Theologically, this context highlights Jesus' innocence. He was crucified as a king in mockery. You can read about that in John 19:19. Yet his death echoes Psalm 22's forsaken one, proving God's sovereignty over human injustice. The process was gruesome and deliberate. After scourging, the weakened victim carried the patibulum, which was the crossbeam, to the execution site outside the city for public display. There, arms were nailed or tied to the beam, feet to the upright stake. Nails through wrists and ankles to maximise pain without immediate death. The cross was then hoisted. Death came slowly from asphyxiation, struggling to breathe, blood loss, dehydration or exposure lasting hours to days. Variations on the crosses included different cross shapes, the Tau T, the Latin cross, X-shaped crosses, and different heights as well. They would do them low so animals could maul the victims, or high for maximum visibility, or inversions like traditions say happened to St. Peter. So, why this way? Well, because the Romans were using it for humiliation and deterrence, stripping dignity to crush rebellion. Historically, sources like Cicero called it the most cruel and disgusting penalty. For us, it underscores Jesus' voluntary suffering, theologically central to atonement, his blood shed for many. Other famous examples include the Spartacus slave revolt in 71 BC, when Crassus crucified 6,000 survivors along the Appian Way as a warning. In Judea, Roman governors like Varus crucified 2,000 rebels around 4 BC and Titus thousands during the 70 AD siege of Jerusalem per Josephus. These show its commonality as a tool of terror. It persisted until Emperor Constantine, the first Christian ruler, abolished it empire-wide in 337 AD out of reverence for Jesus, making a shift as Christianity spread. This historical end reminds us of the cross's transformation from shame to glory. Focusing on Jesus now, the Gospels detail his scourging under Pilate, where soldiers added a crown of thorns and mocked him. He carried his cross to Golgotha, was nailed and endured hours of agony, forgiving his persecutors before crying out. After death, a spear pierced his side, releasing blood and water, medically indicating pericardial effusion from trauma. Theologically, this was no accident. It fulfilled prophecies, Zechariah 12:10, and God's plan for salvation, as the Church teaches in the Catechism. So, how should this influence what we think about Jesus' passion? Historically and theologically, it shows the immense price he paid, enduring Roman brutality to atone for sins. As Christians, it fills us with hope. His scourging heals our wounds. His crucifixion defeats death. It calls us to live gratefully, carrying our own crosses, knowing suffering united to his leads to resurrection joy. I mean, what a gift that is. So, thanks for joining me today. I'm so encouraged by how Jesus' story turns darkness into light. And if any of this has resonated with you, please like, subscribe and share. God bless.